Okay, so I guess we're live on Facebook, and we are going to discuss an article that I found last week on the lighter side of real estate, and it deals with some pricing myths.
All right, so let's jump into them here. The first two I felt were kind of similar, so I'll go over them. Number one is, if we keep waiting, a better offer will come along. And number two, getting an offer right away means the agent priced it too low. So in our market right now, 1,700 houses on the market. At any given time, there could be 1,700 people who hope to have an offer on their house. So definitely dealing with the first offer is not a bad thing. We've sort of had the mindset, even when the market was stronger, a lot of times the first people to come to the table are the best clients to be dealing with, and that doesn't mean necessarily that offer is the best offer, but a lot of times they might be the best candidate to purchase the house. So definitely when things happen in a timely manner, it typically works out best for the seller. They have the most leverage to negotiate, and less showings and inconvenience for a seller isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, typically the first 7 to 10 days on market are where we see our biggest influx of showings, and the demand is the highest. So, anytime an offer comes in that time period, it's a good idea to at least have a good look at it and try to deal with it if it's anything reasonable.
With that in mind, I guess you do want to make sure that it was properly exposed to the market. And that might be somewhat what they're speaking to here. If a property hasn't been exposed to the market, then it could leave them feeling that way. But if hopefully your realtor's done a good job and gotten that exposure in the early days, then there should be no reason you're not willing to deal with an offer if it does come in quickly.
Right, and that takes us to number 3, where it says we should price it so there's room to negotiate. So when you deliberately overprice a property and you say, we'd be willing to look at offers, what you're doing is you are narrowing your buyer pool by excluding the people who have certain upper limitations at what they're going to look at and what they're approved for. So you're even hoping that some of those people might come to the table and write you a lower offer that you might be willing to accept, but they're not even going to look at the property. And by the time you get to a price point where they're actually going to consider the property and something they look at, well, by that time your days on market have already run up, and it's kind of the opposite of points 1 and 2, where you lose a little bit more of that leverage as your property runs a little bit more stale. So yeah, you should in our market right now, there is a little bit of room to negotiate on the list price, but you don't want to deliberately overprice something by 20 or 30 grand just hoping to get an offer.
Next one here says we can add all renovation costs to the asking price. Now, this is a tough one because renovations obviously add to the value of your home in most cases, but what sometimes people forget to consider is there's more of a personal value associated with that as well. So you're not always going to recoup the full value of it if that was done, if that decision was made to enhance the enjoyment of your house. And I think you need to be reasonable in that expectation. It isn't cut and dry. This is what we paid. This is what we spent. Add the two together. There is going to be, for lack of a better word, a bit of a depreciation because, that next buyer might not have done the exact same renovation as you, so they're not going to value it to the same extent that you have.
Right. The best renovations that we've seen in homes are the ones where people were renovating it to improve the way they live their life in their own home and then made a decision to sell after. So get some utility out of the renovations or the basement development or the landscaping. Get some utility out of it yourself because, like Jim said, it's like driving a BMW off the lot. There is going to be a little bit of value lost to it in the fact that somebody might have chosen a few different things, and so they might not place the entire retail price of what you paid for it back onto it. And talking about pricing, there's one of the articles or one of the subject lines here says that's not what my Zestimate says it's worth. So Zestimate is, there's a company in the US called Zillow, and if you go to their website, they'll give you what they call a Zestimate, which is kind of a quick snapshot appraisal, for lack of a better word, of what your property's worth. And we don't have the Zillow site here, but what we do need to be conscious of, you'll find values of properties everywhere. Somebody might have an appraisal from 2 years ago. You might have heard about the neighbor's house who's listed privately for 40 grand more than what you think most of the houses in the area are selling for. And those prices don't really matter. The only thing that actually matters when you're selling your property is what is somebody currently in the market willing to pay for that property in our current market right now? What is somebody actually willing to pay for it? And that's the market value.
Yep. Last one here, I think we'll touch on is reducing the price is a sign of weakness. And, you know, usually with my clients, often they'll say, well, we don't want to look desperate. We don't want to, you know, look like we're too eager. And with current market conditions and it being, you know, as we've touched on a lot of product in the market, you know, those price reductions are sometimes necessary. And I know Jason and I often talk that we almost feel sometimes buyers are waiting on it because it is a bit of an expectation in our market right now. So I don't ever see it as a sign of weakness. Usually when I'm talking with clients, I'll say, well, you know, what's the worst that comes of this? A buyer looks at it and thinks you're eager to sell, so they bring us an offer. Well, that's not really a bad position to be in, because as a seller, you can accept, you can reject, or you can counter. The ball's in your court, so we're better to have something to deal with than to not. So personally, you know, we try and price them right out of the gate, but you know, with it being worth what someone's willing to pay, if we need to adjust it, you know, I don't see it as a sign of weakness from the seller.
No, it's when buyers are out looking at properties, they're going to buy the best property among the selection that is available to them within their price range. So it'd be like going into a watch store, and you know, they've got a couple really nice watches. They've got watches over in the corner that are way out of your price range, but they've got a couple really nice watches that you're kind of considering. And then the store owner says, you know what, we've got one of these watches over here in the corner that we've just reduced. It's now in your price range. And they bring that watch over. Well, now out of these 3 watches that you're looking at, this one is head and shoulders above the others you were looking at, and that's the one that you buy because you see the value in it. So if you're out of somebody's range and now you're brought into their selection pool, that's what really helps. That's why we need to get those price points to where they need to be. So I think we've touched on most of these. Some of them are kind of funny. If you do have a chance, we're going to put this article on our Facebook page. Have a look at it. There's some more articles on the lighter side of real estate, and enjoy.
Thank you.